tutorial starts with a song, but it's only a few seconds long.
Computer animation. Computer animation. Computer animation.
Let's get started with animation. Today we have a dark cloud over Cologne here in Germany, and I want to do an abstract scene in Maya which doesn't show the cloud. You can create the cloud by yourself, but which shows the skyline in the background of a rather dim scene. So the first thing we're going to do is we go to Arnold and we create a physical sky. The scene all of a sudden gets dark. That's because the huge SkyDome wraps around the whole scene. So when we go a little bit further away, we see this dark sphere here. That's the SkyDome here. And when we render it, Arnold render, we see black because we look into the ground as opposed to the horizon, like now. So let's do this now. And here we see the horizon with the sky. And this is the perspective we're going to work from. I find the SkyDome light a little bit disturbing, that black here. Even if you click here, see the textures, you don't see anything but black. That's why I go to show and then I untick the lights. So I don't see the lights in the viewport, but they're still being rendered. Now I want to create a skyline which is being seen here in the distance. Just a black skyline. How do I do this? The most simple way is not to create 3D geometry, but 2D geometry. And for this purpose, we'll go to one of the side windows here. For example, the side one or the front one. And here it's black again because we need to untick the lights here, so we see it a little bit better. The dimensions are not important really, but something is important, and we're going to use this icon here to create a curve. When I just click on it and I want to paint a skyline, I get rounded curve parts, and that's certainly not something I want for the skyline. So I delete this and I double click this icon, and then the tool settings pop up, and I have a curve degree by default set to 3. That's cubic. That means I get a rounded curve. This is one of the elegant things about NURBS modeling really. But I will go to 1 curve degree is 1 linear, and I close this window. Now when I click, I create hard edges. And I can start with my skyline now. First of all, I'll create a huge tree. Doesn't look really huge here, but it will look huge compared to all the buildings I'll create later. Just click a couple of times, and so this is our tree here. Now instead of creating a second curve, I just continue here, and I create, here's maybe a roof, and here's the next building. I just keep clicking according to my fantasy. I speed this up now because I don't want to bore you. Little houses here, and let's finish it off with yet another tree. Now, before you press enter, try to close that curve. And closing a curve is pretty easy really. You need curve snapping in order to do that. We're currently at this point here, and we want to get there because that's where our curve started. Right here. And now I press and hold the key C, and you will see this turn up here. I think this icon here. This is toggling C. Now I press and hold C, and now I get close to this curve here, and you see my last point, the last point I'm going to set, sticks here, and I press enter. And now I have basically the skyline I wanted to create. What I'll do next is, because we need geometry in order to render it, the curves are infinitely thin, we just go to modeling. I'm under modeling. If you're somewhere else, go to modeling and surfaces and planar. I'm going to create a planar surface. This command fails if your curve is not absolutely flat, but mine is flat. That's why I see my skyline right here. Now I want to put it in perspective of my rendering. And actually, by coincidence, this is quite all right. In other cases, you might have to rotate this around the y-axis because you created it in one of the orthogonal windows, and we're rendering, of course, a perspective window. Let's render this. So it's much too high, as you can see. But we can put the render window to the side. And here you see we get closer to the ground now. And now we can scale this up, of course. Now we create a shader for this, new material, and we go for a simple Maya Lambert shader, and we make it black because we don't need to see any contrast here. It's just totally black. And now we're basically done. We can center this so it's more in the center of the scene, or we just adjust our camera. And here you can see that we can actually rotate it so it gets a little bit more in the orthogonal view here, which is quite nice. We can render this, of course, properly, but how about this? Select the SkyDome light here in the outliner, and then go from the AI SkyDome light shape tab further to the right to the AI physical sky. And here you find two attributes which are really interesting, and they change a lot. The elevation and the azimuth. The elevation is how high the sun sits in the scene. And we can lower the sun now, so it's at a very flat angle. And we can raise this value. That means the sun walks around the scene. So we're rotating the sun around the scene. And I think this is already pretty cool here. If you don't want to see the sun because it's that little dot here, you just disable the sun and still you have an amazing rendering now. When you raise the elevation again, the sun goes higher. Of course, what you could do next is create mountains, a mountain range, and set it to the very back of the scene, and then see how a camera move affects the perspective. Very interesting. And with this, I'll leave you alone now. Have a nice day. Bye bye.